Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to my week 17 of 2022 weekly wrap up. And boy, we've got some fun books to talk about. This last week was kind of the week of the reread for me, and you'll see what I mean when we dive in, but I was just feeling nostalgic for a lot of certain books, some of which are for a certain read along that I'm doing, but a lot of which I was kind of feeling overwhelmed by a lot of arcs that I had to read the week before, and I just kind of dived headfirst into a lot of rereads, and now I'm like panicking trying to finish some arcs that I need to finish. It's a whole thing. And also my Patreon is launching tomorrow/today, depending on if you are a channel member or watching this, because anyway, channel members get to see my videos early. So I'm just all type of hyped and overwhelmed by all of it. It's the Outlander finale tonight that I'm filming this. It is the SJM Along meeting number 2 tonight, and there's just a lot of amazing things happening. It's fantastic and overwhelming in the best of ways. But let's dive into some new channel members we have to mention. Let's dive into those. We have Ashley Crislip, who became a romantic renegade. Thank you, Ashley. I know she's been a watcher for a while. She sent me some beautiful books in the past, so thank you so much. And then Shelly became a fated friend. Shelly, welcome to your first week as a fated friend. Thanks for joining. As I have said multiple times, the outpouring of love during this time of my life has made everything a little bit more bearable. So thank you so much for that, because it very easily could have been very overwhelming for me. So one other thing I want to share, and this they're so beautiful that I had to. I had a viewer reach out to me on Instagram saying that they know that I read fanfics and that they have started bookbinding. Now, y'all know it's hidden behind me down there, but I have my copy of Manacled that my friend Jo, from Not So Average Jo, by the way, she started her channel back up again, and we'll be doing videos about bookbinding, which is awesome. But this very lovely viewer, Melody, wanted to send me a couple of my favorite fics just to help me smile. And so she bound up Safe Word is Devil's Snare for me. Just the binding on these is so well done, like absolutely gorgeous. And I showed these in a quick little Instagram video, but she is fantastic and I love this. So this one is the Neville and Hermione one I love. And then she also did Contradictions, which, yes, I did start rereading because of that. I actually had already started rereading on my Kindle a while ago, because I love this story so much. And she bound this for me as well. So there's a really pretty, like, look at the chapter headings. So anyway, Melody is amazing, and she's actually going to continue binding. And because she just loves binding so much, she is going to be making some for me to give away in giveaways in the future. So definitely go check out Mel Binds Fic on Instagram. I'll put her channel thing down below, because if you love fanfics, you might want to be checking me out, because I'm gonna have some to give away from her generous heart for making these. Like, I told her that I was like, you know, every one of those you make, you're gonna have to make 2 of them, because I'm gonna want them. And she's like, oh girl, I got you. I was like, great. So anyway, let's dive into what I read. I believe I have 14 books / novellas to share with you this week. So without further ado, let's get into those. So the first one I actually forgot to share about last week. I take really great notes about what I read, but I forgot to share about an arc that I read, and that is Blame It on the Vodka, which has already released. This is book 3 in this, like, Blame It series. They're each about a different, like, girl in this. Fiona Cole calls it this girl gang, and they're all either like accidental marriages and or like marriages of convenience is what the tropes are. And this one was actually a best friends accidentally get married in Vegas, and I loved it. This is about Austin and Raylan, and they first meet actually when Raylan hits on Austin and he turns her down, because he's like, we're gonna be friends, we're not gonna fuck, we're gonna be friends. And they become friends. And Raylan is kind of scared of commitment, which is why it's surprising to everyone when she's in this semi-long-term relationship with this absolute asshole who has slowly become abusive of her. And she's a bit disappointed in herself that she's let herself get into this situation, especially since she supposedly doesn't want commitment. She's stayed with this guy. But anyway, she breaks up with this guy who has gotten abusive, and they are in Vegas for some other friend's wedding, and her and Austin end up getting married. And Austin doesn't want to get divorced from her. And they end up agreeing to be like, they're real married, but they end up agreeing to stay married for both of their families for a certain amount of time. And Austin wants to use that time to prove to her that they should be together. And Austin also has some spicy secrets that he's been keeping, including how he likes to have sex. So there's that. I gave this book 4 stars, and it had a spice rating of 4. The detractor for me is that Remy, I was pretty sure this was going to happen just because she is set up to have commitment issues, and she was extremely frustrating for me in that aspect. But it was still a really great time. I adored Austin, and I ended up enjoying the book. And either way. Then there was another arc that I read. I actually had gotten a physical book of it because I was having trouble reading the ebook. And since this one is traditionally published with St. Martin's, I was able to get a copy the week before, as sometimes happens, and that is that Cowboy of Mine by Donna Grant. So I have a couple other books by Donna Grant that are in her like Dragon series, and I haven't read them yet. And then when I saw this on NetGalley, I was like, oh, she wrote cowboys, let me try it. Unfortunately, this was kind of a bomb for me. And I feel bad. I want to like more modern westerns or modern cowboy, and really I've only liked ones that are like dark. Like Pam Godwin has some cowboys, and of course Sophie Lark has one. And then I've also read some by Kennedy Fox. I do like their cowboys as well, but this was kind of like a romantic suspense. Our hero Cal wakes up like hungover, and it is in Dylan, our heroine. She has inherited this ranch from her aunt who passed on, and she finds this guy on her land, and she's trying to kick him off her land. He's woken up like hungover, and one of her like prized horses is missing, and so she's blaming him for it. And then someone starts shooting at her, and he saves her from that. And then they end up in like a fake dating situation to try to lure out the people who are attacking her. It didn't really work for me. I gave it 3 stars mostly because it was an arc, and I really don't rate arcs less than 3 stars. And there's nothing legitimately wrong with this. I just was bored. It wasn't engaging to me, and I don't rate things highly just because they're good. But it's also extremely low steam. There was like 1.5 sex scenes in this, and I was bored. So it had all those things working against it, unfortunately. Then I read To Beg or Not to Beg by Kat Giraldo, and I was having a good time with this one right here. So this is an MMF retelling of Hamlet, and this is the first in, I think this series is going to be called like the Kinky Classics or the Dirty Classics. I can't remember. I don't know much about Hamlet. I know the vague outlines, and I have read a retelling called Ophelia before, so I know the vague outlines of it, but I was not a literary connoisseur at any point in my life. Just because things are fancy doesn't mean that I'll like them. I'm that type of person. But again, I know enough to get by. So this is a really cool novel too, because Ophelia and Horatio are already in a kinky relationship together. They've been in one for a while, even though they're forced to live apart for large amounts of time because of their work, and also because Ophelia is in hiding from some things that happened in her home country. And her and Hamlet have never gotten along. There's kind of this crazy hate tension between them, but Hamlet is attracted to both of them, and Horatio kind of knows this. And when Horatio gets home from traveling, he goes to see Ophelia, and when Hamlet comes in and sees them together, Ophelia sees that and doesn't stop what she's doing and continues on so that Hamlet gets a good eyeful of what's happening. And then Horatio decides to test it out, and he calls Hamlet in to their play with them. So this becomes a MMF, kinky BDSM, where both of them dominate Hamlet. So yeah, Horatio dominates both of them, and Ophelia dominates Hamlet. So we get this dynamic going on. It was very sexy in the first half of this, and I'm not saying it's definitely stays sexy, but there is like an overall plot that has to do with, you know, the murder of King of Denmark, and like Hamlet is supposed to be becoming the next king, and there's court intrigue. And the thing is, for me, is like, I think that will really work for some people, especially people who actually like the play Hamlet. For me, I didn't really care, and I was more interested in their dynamic and how it was going to work out, because Hamlet is going to become king, and will he be able to be in this polyamorous relationship where he's the submissive to these two? We don't know how that's going to work. This is also interracial. Ophelia's black in this. And yeah, this was a KU find. I can't remember who I saw talking about this one. I can't remember if I just saw it advertised on KU or if there was someone who got me into it, but I gave it 4 stars, and it definitely is a 5 on the spice scale. There are trigger warnings for murder, assault, death of a parent. The author does have a full list of everything, and at the head of the chapters where the trigger warning happens, it is in the front of each chapter, which I thought was very nice. It reminded me a little bit of fanfic in a way, you know, because I love reading it, where when you read a fanfic on AO3, at the beginning of the chapter, the author can remind you of what the trigger warnings are for that chapter, which can be nice. For me, I don't always love getting that because it can be spoilery in the moment, but I think it was very smart, and it was a nice way to see that happen. Okay, then we have our Crown of Midnight. No surprise, the live show for that will have already happened by the time my greater channel is seeing this, but this will be the second meeting of our SDM along, and I'm so excited. There was such a great turnout for the first one. I'm so excited for this one. Great time. Rereading this book, I had such a great time, okay? So much. This book was probably my least favorite the first time I read it, and I can tell that from my ratings. I gave this one like a 3-star the first time, and there is so much groundwork that's being laid, and Sarah J. Maas definitely has a perchance to meander. Now, those meanderings, when you're reading through her books the first time, can be frustrating, because it's like, why are you taking so long to explain the minutia of something? Reading this the second time, and reading this while looking for ways to connect these books to her future books and what groundwork she may have been laying, I had a fabulous time reading this, okay? Also, I wasn't looking to hook her up with anybody in this one this time. Whereas the first time I read this, I was like, okay, where's the man? Where's the man she's going to be with? Is it going to be this person? Is it going to be that person? And so I was very disappointed with how this book played out. I was like, really? Okay. Because I'm a horny bitch, and this wasn't giving me what I wanted this time. Even though there are some fade to black sex scenes in this one, whereas in the first one there wasn't anything. Anyway, I still love this. It still made me tear up. It has me so excited for Air of Fire. It was very hard to hold myself back, but I was like, don't bully through all of these right away. So I had a wonderful time rereading this. I did up my rating to a 4-star this time, and there is a steam puff in this one. That is not a rating I have to use very often, but there is sex in this, but it's not graphically depicted by any means, and it doesn't last for very long, unfortunately. And then there is a trigger warning for death in this book, as well as other forms of violence, of course. All right, then, like I said, I went on kind of a rereading thing, and I reread Hard Hitter because the Smart Women Read Romance podcast, I am a Patreon member of theirs, and they were doing this book for the monthly book club, or the monthly like review, and I hadn't read Hard Hitter in a while, and I first read all of Serena Bowen and like the El Kennedy, like all the like crossover books that they did together back in March of 2020. When I was on my trip back from Colombia during lockdown, I was keeping my head focused on books, and I read all of these, starting with Him and Us, and then I went to I read all of it. I loved it. So this book is about Patrick O'Doul, who is the team captain and an enforcer for the Brooklyn Bruisers, and he is really like he's very burnt out, both physically and mentally. He's a bit older for being a hockey player. He's seen a lot. He lives a kind of a life of isolation for being a famous hockey player, and he needs to get some massages and like physical therapy in the beginning of this, and he really doesn't like to be touched. And then we have Ari, who is our massage therapist and like yogi for the team, and she finally gets her hands on him, literally, and starts working through some of his issues with him, with being touched and things, and he quickly falls for her, head over heels, obsessed with her. She recently got out of a very bad relationship and left this like crazy man that she was living with for many years, and she just does not feel ready to take on another relationship, even though Patrick does some of the sweetest stuff to win her over. Just so sweet. So upon reread, there definitely were some more issues that came to fruition to me than the last times I read this. Just like Ari being so stubborn about things, about not asking for help. Sorry, that shining is bugging me. And that bothers me to the degree that she sticks with her stubbornness, even at the risk of her life, when there are people begging her to let them help her. Like, there are things I could nitpick. Like, I could nitpick this book a lot, but this was a 5-star the first time I read it, and it stayed a 5-star this time. It's a 3-star on the spice scale. There is also a very sexy sex scene with, like, role-playing, where Patrick is like, let me be your masseur, and he, like, sticks with the bit the whole way through. It was very adorable. And then, because, as I've said, I cannot reread one Serena Bowen without also rereading Brooklyn Air, my favorite Serena Bowen. Well, very close to my favorite. There's one other one that I love a little more. But this one is about Nate Katzenberger, who is a tech boy billionaire who owns the hockey team the Brooklyn Bruisers. And he has a long-term assistant named Becca, who actually in Hard Hitter, this is the book that she gets hurt. She gets a concussion, and it's not going away. It's causing her severe migraines and vertigo, and she almost isn't able to move or function, and Nate steps in to make sure she takes care of herself, and also has been hiding a crush that he's had for her for years. When they first met, he had a girlfriend and was engaged to someone, and so that, and then he's her employer, and he knows that he has a very powerful position over her, and he's very, very careful never to step over the line. But also, he eventually realizes that he could be missing his chance with the woman of his dreams if he doesn't find a way to make it work. So there are like issues for them in this one that I feel like are realistic when you have a billionaire boyfriend who just wants to take care of all your issues and make your life easy, and you don't want to feel like you owe him anything besides, yourself. But I love this couple. They make me smile so big. Oh, I just love them. So this was a 5-star, and this is also a 3 on the spice scale, and he gets a little demanding in the bedroom, and it's real hot, okay? That's real good. Then I finished The Red Lily by Juliet Cross, one of my besties and a very talented author. And I'm so happy to be working my way through this vampire series of hers. I started the series with The Black Lily back in February for the Fayro Feb readathon, and I knew that I wanted to continue. So all of these books are fairy tale retellings, and they all have vampires in them, but also other things going on. And the main arc is that there's a rebellion coming up called the Black Lily, and there's an evil vampire queen who wants to crush it and destroy it. And in this next book, in the first book, we set up the resistance and you know, we know who the black lily is and we know what's going on. And the red lily, we are reacquainted with Sienna, who is this witch who lives in the woods, who has this pack of heart wolves is what they're called, these ginormous wolf creatures who look out for her, and she protects her woods. And Nikolai, who is the ex-captain of the guard, so he was the captain of the guard for our Prince Marius, who was the hero in the first book. Since they are breaking away from the evil queen, he now, you know, isn't officially the guard or anything. He gets sent by Marius to recruit Sienna so they can start building the resistance in where they are, because Marius and his woman, they had to go somewhere else to build up their resistance. So Sienna is hesitant to work with Nikolai, especially because they are extremely attracted to each other, and they want to not do anything about that attraction because they know that it will just end in pain for both of them, because he is a vampire and is immortal and she is a human. So they're like, let's just stay away from that. But as they begin to travel together, things are going to happen. So this was absolutely delightful. The spice is cranked way up in this one from the first one, and their chemistry, like, Juliet writes chemistry on page so well. Like, just, it's so beautiful. Just every moment they're around each other, you just feel this, like, crackling, like, living thing between them, and it brings me so much joy. So I absolutely just had such a great time with this one. I gave this one 4 stars. And it is 3.5 on the spice scale. There is blood play, no surprise, violence, and death in this one. And I can't wait to read the White Lily next. I'm so excited. Then I read a fanfic. I read Nightmare by Provocative Envy. This was a recommendation by a viewer. And this was my first Tomioni fanfic. So Tom Riddle and Hermione, okay? Yes. You're wondering how that works. Let me tell you. So Hermione accidentally breaks a time turner, and when this time turner breaks, she gets sent back in time 50 years to 1944, where she contacts the Dumbledore of that time, and he gets her into Hogwarts. She gets resorted. This time she gets put in Slytherin because the Sorting Hat tells her there's work you need to do in Slytherin. And she ends up being friends, kind of. In the beginning, she's kind of friends with Tom Riddle. Well, he's very suspicious of her. He doesn't really have, like, friends, but he's intrigued by this woman. Lestrange. I think it's Edmund Lestrange at this time. And then there is Abraxas Malfoy, I think, but that's the crew. And they, of course, all want her, and it's very suspicious why they all want her. And even she, like, I like it because even she at one point is like, why do all these Slytherin men want me? It's very strange. Tom is interested in her because she is not who she says she is, and he's very clear of that, because she's pretending to be Dumbledore's niece, which I assume, like, she's supposed to be a lost, like, child of Aberforth somehow or something. I don't know. But that's what they're going with, and Tom is very suspicious of all this. And so we get Tom's point of view from his diary. So we get diary entries of Tom Riddle. And holy smokes, this was very interesting. There was so much to love about this. There really was. It was just so fascinating in so many ways, because Hermione is just trying to find a way to get herself out of there, and she doesn't want to get, like, wrapped up in anything. She's like, every second I'm here, I'm changing the timeline. Though it becomes pretty clear eventually that, like, the timeline is already so fucked to hell at this point that what are you trying to get back, you know? And then there's the thought of what happens if, because at one point in this fic, this is a really long one. This is like 550 pages. This is a pretty long one. At one point in this fic, Dumbledore is like, well, what if you change Tom? Like, what if you make him good, you know, by her magic pussy, I guess, or whatever we're going with. And she's like, but I wouldn't want to, because then do my friends ever get born, you know? So it's this thing where, like, she doesn't want Tom to be such a horrible person, but also if he's not, and if things don't go the way they go, does she have her friends still there in the future? Don't know. But anyway, there was a lot to love about this one. So obviously this was like enemies to lovers, forced proximity. Tom at one point is very jealous of her being with anyone else, because she does end up forming an attachment at one point with like the Malfoy character back then. And she's like, well, this could be a good way to stay safe, because if I'm with Malfoy, maybe I'll be safe here. And Tom ends up like forcing her to be his like fake girlfriend because he's like, I don't want anyone else to have you. But he is very uninterested, up to this point has been very uninterested in sex or women at all. He's been almost asexual, and now like Hermione's brain just really turns him on. They're both very turned on by each other's brains. And this is actually a like they're both virgins story, you know, because they're both only like 16, 17 in this. And Tom is hot, guys. When his sexual awakening is happening, it was good. So yeah, this also had a bit of like a historical vibe because they're in the 1940s, so there's that. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. It was a 3.5 on the spice scale. I mostly took a star away because the last like 30% of this book, I feel like the author of this fic didn't know how to have it wrap up well, and so it got a little, I mean, a lot crazy, which as they do, fanfics can go crazy places. So I did give it 4 stars, but I liked it. And then there was trigger warnings for death, dubious consent, assault, attempted assault, and there's drugging at one point too, with like a wizard date rape drug. Not by Tom, by someone else. Not that he doesn't do his own dubious things, but anyway. All right, and then I also read Control Freak by Brianna Hale. This was a viewer member request, but also I've had this on my own personal TBR for ages. So this was on my April TBR, and I had been scared to read it because of what it's about. And our heroine is recovering from an eating disorder. She has anorexia. So if there ever was a trigger warning for those sensitive topics, this one definitely is, because our heroine is actively struggling with this disease and with trying to be better and with self-doubt and hating herself, and all that is in there. However, this wasn't necessarily a dark romance, even with what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if you're sensitive to those things, that's really going to shout at you from this book. Like, those things are going to jump out at you. I'm not overly sensitive to those. And the way that it was handled in this, the way that our hero in this one doesn't fix her, but gives her tools to help her work through it. And she is in therapy in this. So it's like, this is a very real thing. She is suffering from this, but the author did a lot of homework. She did a lot of research. And it is one of the best, like, thought out and prepared books that I've read by Brianna Hale. Because she often just writes but she often writes these very bonkers romances that, you know, they're very sexy. They have lots of BDSM. They're very kinky. This one felt very real, and that makes it hard. But also, if you're not triggered by those things I've said, I do really recommend this, because I feel like it does give you a good insight into what someone who's struggling with that could be thinking. Because this author did her research well. Anyway, for all of that, Control Freak is about our heroine, Lacey, who's 25, and her life's a wreck. You know, she has been out of the facility for about a year, but it's still a struggle every day. Her parents don't fully get it. She has a lot of shame that she's hiding. There's a lot of this. So she's supposed to be getting back into college, and for the summer, her father gets her kind of this like part-time gig with this man who he's 39 years old, and his name is Stein. I forgot to look up how to pronounce his name, but he is Scandinavian, so I was definitely picturing Alexander Skarsgård for this. He's very grumpy, and he needs an assistant part-time, and so she takes this role, and she really likes it because he's a very controlling and domineering boss, and she actually likes that because she likes very strict, rigid rules. There's an attraction between them, but it's definitely kept apart. And again, so she's 25, he's 39. So it is a very large, it's a 15-year age gap. It's office romance. There's a dynamic between, you know, there's a boss employee, but this one isn't like overly taboo in, you know, like, again, she's 25, but she's very like innocent, and she is a virgin. because she just would have never let anyone see her naked or get that close to her because of her body issues. So anyway, their dynamic ends up happening basically because she asks it to. I don't want to spoil like all the details of it, but point being, they end up in a BDSM relationship with daddy. Just like daddy is what he prefers to be called. It's not like overly going into it. He just likes the honorific daddy, and she likes saying it. There's lots of good girl stuff in this. And the way that they start their relationship is that for 1 hour after work every day, they have a dynamic together. So there actually isn't like full sexual relationship even involved until much later in. Obviously it's still sexual because it is, but it's a very slow build to more between them. And like I said, this was a very powerful story. And when things spiral for her, because things do spiral and it hurts, like it hurts to watch. Again, like our heroine's in therapy. She's able to talk through her therapist with this. But when she spirals and things get bad, our hero just wants to be there for her. And he isn't trying to fix her. This isn't that type of romance. She will struggle with this her whole life. But because of the control that they have, and because of the rules that he makes, and because he offers her a time where she doesn't have to exert that control over herself, he does it for her, she's able to relax and just enjoy him taking care of her. And I really love this. I gave it 5 stars, and it was one of my favorite books of April. I really liked it. So I gave it 5 stars. It's a 4 on the spice scale. Again, I've mentioned the trigger warnings: eating disorder, mental health, self-harm being within, like I consider an eating disorder self-harm. And then, yeah, the reasons, like this is a heavy topic. And if you have suffered with an ED, are suffering with it, or, you know, find thoughts of self-hate and loathing difficult, probably stay away from this. But again, I wouldn't have seen this really as a dark romance, even though the topic is heavy, because it has an air of hopefulness and it does have an HEA. So there you go. Then there was Jessie's Girl by Naima Simone. This doesn't come out until May. I got this off of NetGalley, and I like that it was called Jessie's Girl. Was the 100% the reason I grabbed it. I mean, I do like Naima Simone. I've read some of her stuff in the past. And this was a best friend's ex. India was dating Asa's best friend. Asa's best friend, see, I don't even remember his name. He cheated on India, and so they broke up, and he hasn't seen her in 2 years. Now Asa is the guardian of his niece because his sister tragically died, and he gets called to come to the principal because the daughter has gotten in trouble. And I think India is the principal, or else she's like an assistant principal or something. I don't know. And that's how they meet again for the first time. And then they end up being together. This was the only novella length, so it went really quick. I gave this 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. No like trigger warnings or anything for that. Then I had another reread. I reread Breaking Perfect by Lydia Michaels. Now I'm actually going to put up a picture because I was listening to the audiobook for this one. So this is my original copy. I've had this book. I've marked this book. This is one of my favorite books ever. It is a MMF. It is a married couple who've been together for 5 years. This heroine has OCD. She also has control issues, and her husband is a trauma surgeon in the ER, and they've been together for, like I said, 5 years. There's a 10-year age gap between them, and what happens in this book is that Mason, the hero, his ex-lover, Sean, that guy's father has died, and that father is part of the reason that Sean and Mason weren't able to be together. Yes, Mason is bisexual, and he wanted to be with Sean, but Sean didn't want to commit to being with a man forever. So it's been 13 years since they've seen each other. It's been a long time. And Sean wanted to come see Mason, and when he reaches out, he finds out that Mason is married to a woman, and he's very shocked by this. And he surprises them and shows up, and by doing this, he really messes with the ecosystem of their family, because Mason and Libby have very controlled lives to help Libby. It also happens to be at a time when Mason is discovering that Libby is definitely a submissive. I mean, like, he knew she was submissive as in, like, personality type, but she desires to be controlled, and when he exerts that control as a dom on his wife, she is able to free herself in a lot of ways, and it's really beautiful. Cue Sean showing up and fucking up with that, and also maybe Libby is a bit attracted to Sean as well, and also maybe he gets invited to a couple of situations, and maybe Mason decides that he can have his wife and Sean could be a part of his life again. This is one of my first menages I ever read, and I will say that upon reread, there are some issues with it that pop up. There's definitely cheating by omission. Mason makes a lot of things happening between them seem that Libby is completely allowed to say yes or no, and she is allowed to say yes or no, but also it takes until very far into the story for him to fully admit what happened with him and Sean before. And because Libby is seen as kind of childlike in her not that she's stupid by any means, but she's extremely accepting of all of that and doesn't super question some situations that are happening. Like, it's hard to explain, but if you go into this with an open mind, I still really enjoyed this because I love BDSM as healing and sex as bringing people together. This one fully is an erotic romance. Now, the difference between an erotic romance and an extremely spicy romance is that in an erotic romance, if you took the sex out, the story isn't there. But in a romance, no matter how spicy it is, if you took the sex out, the romance still stands. That's the difference. Don't let anyone tell you that just because a book is overly spicy that it's erotic. Erotica. Like, the book might be erotic because it's sexy, but they're not the same thing. That's the difference in the genres, subgenres, okay? This is an erotic romance. Like, all of the main connection, the things that move the story forward, the way that we see emotion and connection is through the sex. Like, we took the sex out, the story, we're not left with a lot. So, yes. So anyway, I reread this. It was still a 5-star for me. However, here's the issue. So this was 5 stars, 5 spice scale. This is, whew, there is sex in every chapter in this book. And it's all really beautiful stuff. The issue with this, I was reading this to read the audiobook. I was offered the audiobook as an ARC. I was very excited to it. I hated this audiobook. I DNF'd the audiobook at about 50% and finished my reread of the physical copy because the narrator this time, and I don't know why, I've listened to this narrator before and enjoyed him, but his choices with not even how their voices sound, but how he narrated it was awful. Like, I don't know another way to say it. I'm sorry. Again, I love this narrator. I've listened to other books I liked, and I kind of, like, blame whoever was, you know, checking the audio because it was bad. Like, it was so stilted and the sex scenes were ruined in a lot of times. So I DNF'd that, and rating the audiobook, I gave the audiobook performance a 2-star because I had to rate it on Audible. That's what I was supposed to review. And I gave it 2 stars because it ruined my enjoyment. And if this had been the first time I was reading the book, I would have DNF'd the book. But I didn't. I turned off the audio and was like, fuck that. I'm going to finish my favorite book. And then I had a good time. So, review of the audiobook, meh. Review of this book, yeah. So, there we are. Then I moved on to another Lydia Michaels, though, because all of her Jasper Falls books are being put into audios. I read one of them last week, really liked it. This one was a novella called Love Me Nots, and this is about actually the sister from Wake My Heart. So, this one was only, like, a 2-hour-long audiobook. It's like 160 pages, and this is about the sister Perrin, who her boyfriend, her fiance was cheating on her in the last book, and now it's a year later, and she's running her restaurant with her sister, and this guy Gage, who is a billionaire, like, he owns, like, hardware stores, kind of, or, like, something like that, and he wants to put in a store in Jasper Falls, and, like, that's a bad idea because, like, it would ruin a lot of things. So her and him really butt heads over that, and he really wants to date her, and she's like, I'm done with boys because one guy cheated on me. So it was fun time. I listened to it really quickly yesterday while I was editing some other things. So I gave it 4 stars, and it was only a 1.5 on the spice scale though. The Jasper Falls series is not going to be very spicy, which is so like funny to me compared to, you know, other books I've read by this author, but they're very sweet and I like it, and I plan to read all of them. So there we go. Then I did my reread of The Assassin and the Healer, so I'll put up the picture for just this. This is only 40 pages long. This is Selena on her way to like kind of her punishment for what happened in The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. Arubian is very upset with her for letting all of his merchandise, aka the people who are being kept as slaves, free, and she's supposed to be being punished. And on the way she stops at this inn where this woman named Irene is working. Irene, whatever. Irene, blah, blah. I've heard Sarah say Irene when I was on the book tour for Tower of Dawn, so whatever. And Irene was trying to make her way to the Keep of the Healers, and she had to get a job to fund this, and then she's never left. And Selena happens to be staying at this inn for the night, and she rescues Irene from being attacked or worse. So, and then she also gives her the money so that she can go. So it's really an intro of a character that we will meet later on a few years down the road. So great time. I gave it 3.5 stars though. There's not too much to it. It's one of those where you're like, Sarah, did this need a whole book? Probably not, but it's okay. And no steam in this. Trigger warning of attempted assault. There we go. And then the last book that I finished, need some more water, was Dare You by Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine. This was a firefighter gay romance. I have read a ton of Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine, and this was a viewer recommendation from my book rec form. But I am not new to these authors. I used to enjoy them quite a bit. One of the reasons I stopped reading them was 2 reasons. One, they always wrote trilogies that could have been 1 book. And 2, said trilogies always have the same cliffhangers each time. And I hadn't read one in a while. I was excited to read it. It's fun because if you've read any other books by Brooke Blaine and Ella Frank, you are immediately like in a world where you know, like there's characters that have been in all those other books. So that's fun. Like we get to revisit people that we love, you know. But this one is a firefighter who is, to his knowledge, straight, rescues this billionaire who is actually dressed in drag. Bash likes to dress in drag now and then. He's not trans, but he likes to dress in drag. He looks fabulous. It's fantastic. But he thinks he's rescued a woman. And when they get out of the fire, he realizes that he rescued a man. And he's a little taken aback at how beautiful this man is. And then the next day, Bash brings a gift basket to the fire station and is just, you know, dazzling everybody. This time he's dressed as a man, but very impeccably. And Kieran is just like, wow, who's this person? And he ends up inviting him out for drinks with the firefighters. There happens to be a pretty homophobic firefighter in the group, and things go kind of awkwardly. And then Kieran wants to make it up to Bash, and so they end up going on these like friend dates, but the sexual tension between them starts to grow, and some fun stuff, sexy times happen between them, only for there to be a cliffhanger where an ex-girlfriend or a girl that liked Kieran comes back in just in time for Bastion to see them by each other. And so Bash is like, this is why I don't fall for straight guys. Even though Kieran like doesn't want anything to do with this girl, Bash won't stick around to listen, and he leaves. And that's a cliffhanger. And here's the thing, I'm not going to read the other 2 books because I am so over authors doing this. Like, I know they're all on KU, but I was listening to the audio, and I don't want to buy the other 2 audio when I know exactly how the story is going to go, because again, I've read 10 other books by this pairing, and this is how they all go, and I just don't like it. I like, formulas are great in some respect, but I also would like to be surprised now and then. So I'm not ragging on the person who recommended this at all. Like, this is fun, and if this is your first time that you read this author combo, duet, pairing, author pairing, this is really fun. Like Bash and Kieran are really fun, but I've read so many series of theirs where they do this, and I'm just not. Just write one book. Just write it as one book. You can do it. You can do it. So sorry, that's a little salty. I still gave this one 4 stars though. It was a 3 on the spice scale. But when it was done, I was like, I'm not compelled to continue because I'm not gonna do it. Like, even, like, it's KU. You get paid by the page. So just make it a 500-page book and put it in one. And then you still get the same amount of page reads. Like, come on. Anyway, all right, I'm done bitching about it. Thank you so much for watching this. It means so much to me. Thank you to my new channel members. I can't wait to see how Patreon launch goes tomorrow. I'm so nervous and so excited. And it's May tomorrow. It's May Day tomorrow. That's awesome. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.